If you're watching, you understand the power of sales. You understand how hard it is. You understand how uncomfortable it is. I'm going to start off with a little bit of preemptive, a little interview. I'm going to tell you who I am, who Jeremiah is, and then I'm going to tell you a little story, and we're going to rock right in. And our goal here really is to deliver a couple gold nuggets to you that you can take and you can use to make more money. Okay. What's a gold nugget? A gold nugget is one idea that you can explain in one sentence that you can go back and implement. Now, everything we say is not going to be applicable to you and your business, but a couple things that we say, even one or two things that we say, could totally change the trajectory of your career. And those are called gold nuggets. And I want you to be on the lookout for these gold nuggets, and I want you to drop them into the Q&A. There's a little Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom. Click that, open it up. You can ask questions. You can drop in gold nuggets. This is going to be a conversation format between Jeremiah and I. Now, who is Jeremiah Lancaster? Him and I started working together, what, 4 or 5 months ago, Jeremiah? Less, maybe? And he is a sales consultant and he builds sales teams. Okay. His previous career, he worked for a management consultant company. He'd come in and he would build and train and hire and manage 100+ sales reps. And we're talking everything from interviewing to vetting to figuring out who makes a good salesperson to the actual one-on-one training when it comes to listening to sales calls, changing the actual pitch, getting really nitty-gritty when it comes to building the perfect sales strategy. So that's Jeremiah, and he has really opened my eyes and changed the way I think about sales, even in the last 3 months. I've always been very, very good at marketing. Top of funnel for my business has never been a problem. We're pouring customers into the top of the funnel. But what I have never been really good at is optimizing from a data perspective, optimizing how many of those people in the top of my funnel close. Okay. I've always thought the way to get more business is to just market better and get more potential people in the door. But that's only half the equation. And business, as I'm learning, is a big math problem. There's the number of people that come in the door, whether that's through marketing, whatever else. And then there's the percentage of those people that you actually convert from shopping customers to paying customers. That's a percentage. The higher that percentage gets, the better. So just recently, through a lot of work with Jeremiah, we've started trying to optimize that percentage. How are we going to find these people coming in through marketing? We're not talking about marketing today. We're talking about getting on with these people and turning them into paying customers. That's when things get really powerful. Jeremiah is working in 8 of my companies. Is that correct, Jeremiah?
That's right.
He's doing one-on-one sales coaching with my acquisition team at Bolt Storage, my customer service reps who are selling storage units, and then the individual agency operators and sales teams that are running every business from Support Shepherd to RA CostSeg to Bold SEO to AdRhino to WebRun, and the list goes on. So what we're going to talk to you about today is and hopefully deliver a lot of gold nuggets to help you get better at sales. Now I'm going to start with a story before we kick off. I was 23 years old, 23 years old back in 2011, 2012. I was sitting in a coffee shop getting mentored by a successful entrepreneur. I remember it vividly. I remember the exact restaurant I was sitting in Ithaca, New York. And I remember telling this mentor who was asking me, Nick, how do you feel about sales? If I told you right now to pick up the phone, call somebody on the phone and ask them for money, what's the first thing that you feel? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? I told him, I said right away, I was like, oh, no, that's not for me. It's uncomfortable. I get, I'm more of an idea guy. I'm more of a operator, right? I'm more of a leader of people who are on my team, right? And we're going to go out and do these different things. Sales is uncomfortable. You might be saying that exact same thing. He looked me in the eye, and I've told this story to Jeremiah before. He looked me in the eye and he said, Nick, if you don't like sales, you should forget this entrepreneurship thing and you should go get a job. Because everything in your life is sales, especially when you're running a business. Yes, you can get a job for a company where you're doing the same thing over and over again, and sales is not a part of your life. But as soon as you're an entrepreneur, you think maybe you got to sell your customers. And yes, you got to sell your customers on giving you money. You also have to sell your investors on investing in your business. You have to sell your employees on joining your business. You have to sell your vendors on actually selling to you in your business. You are selling nonstop. No human beings do anything in this world without wanting to do it first. You're selling your employees on doing their job correctly. You're selling everybody. Then I realized as I got older that all of life is sales. I got to sell my 6-year-old on getting in the car, getting dressed and getting in the car in the morning. I got to sell my friends on potentially coming over to my house to hang out with me because they're going to get something out of it. Everybody in this world is selfish, right? And I and you and everybody here, we're all trying to find a way to personally benefit while also helping other people. That's when sales works really well. And that's why we're here. So if you don't like sales, and if you've been telling yourself, I hate sales, Jeremiah, I mean, what do we do with those people who have been telling themselves that they hate sales?
You should probably go get a job. You should start to learn how to sell because it's critical. My story is a little different. Early, like the only job I ever had is a sales job, and it started when I was really young. I used to deliver papers for a local newspaper called the South Hills Record, and I realized that if I instead of delivering the paper, if I sold a subscription, I made an extra quarter. And something really clicked in my mind. It was easy for me to go out and just knock on the door instead of just delivering it, to actually go and sell it. I was super nervous, palm sweaty, really kind of freaking out, trying to go to people in my neighborhood about doing this. But as soon as I realized that there was an opportunity for us to be able to, make a difference by simply selling a subscription, that really kind of kicked off my career in sales. Since then, I've always found a way to want to grow a business, right, through sales and business development. But as Nick mentioned, and Danny has said here, sales is life. And when I mean sales is life, we have to sell not only the customers and the prospects that we have, but we also have to sell people on wanting to work for us, especially if you have an early stage business. I talk to business owners all the time, and they're talking about how do we acquire and find great talent? That's a sales job. Nick mentioned investors. You want to have a new investor to fund a project that you have. You have to convince them that, one, you're credible, two, this idea that is crazy may work, and you're actually able to exchange dollars with them. And the same thing happens too, even as you're negotiating with existing people on your team. They're going to want salary raises. They're going to want a different job and to be ambitious. So all that to be said, my journey through sales has always been, this is an important thing that we need to do. And just like any other thing, it requires a lot of practice. And so that's what we do with the Huber Method, is that we help people practice and get better at sales. Unlike other sports, if you can consider sales a sport, a lot of people look at it as, hey, I took a training once. I think I know how to sell something. I was successful in selling one product before, but that doesn't guarantee future results. And that's really where sales coaching, sales training, and what we do comes into play.
I want to start with a story. I was talking to a business owner who actually sold his chunk, which was a multi-million-dollar exit. He sold his chunk of a very successful property and casualty insurance business, meaning they went around to real estate investors, they sold those contracts, and they became the broker of record, and they sold property insurance. And I was like, how did you build this book over time? And he said, Nick, it was as simple as doing one thing. It was as simple as doing one thing. We would follow up with our customers after renewal and say, hey, was there anything about your system, about your process with us that wasn't great? Like, just let us know. We really want some feedback. We're trying to improve. Then he would answer a couple questions, maybe have a brief conversation, or just read an email that said it was great. 2 weeks later, he would call every single person on his whole list, and he would call them up on the phone, make sure to get them on the phone, and he'd say, hey, I just want to ask you nicely, like, could you make a referral? Like, do you have any other business owners out there that need insurance that are in your network? Could you just introduce me to one person? I'm really working hard to grow my business. I know we're doing a great job for you. We're really working hard in these different areas. Is there anybody you could connect me with? Could you please just make me one referral? That one thing, his book doubled every year, and it doubled and it doubled and it doubled. And he had an exit where the whole business was worth $15 million plus. Called all of his customers to ask for referrals. There's a potential gold nugget. Now, let's talk, what is the Huber Method? Me and Jeremiah have been working now for several months to come up with what, in both of our experiences, what is the best way to actually think about sales and methodically build your sales strategy. I'm going to talk about these, and then we're going to briefly elaborate on each. But the number one rule of sales, in my opinion, is to operate from a point of leverage, or at least act like you're operating from a point of leverage and you don't actually need the business, okay? If you're operating from a point of desperation, if you're pushy, if it's the old school sales model of, hey, here's the clipboard, here's the signature line, please sign on it, I need this business, like, let's do it right now. those days are over. Those days are dead. You really need to go into a sales environment thinking you're going to qualify that lead and you're going to ask that lead enough questions that makes them feel like they're kind of getting interviewed as well. And that if our circles overlap, we'll end up working together. Meaning, hey, I don't work with everybody. I don't need to work with everybody. I do a great job. You seem like a good customer. Let's have a conversation and see if our circles overlap. And then if it does, I'm sure we'll have a long and fruitful relationship. Okay, that's step one. Number two, show that you're an expert, meaning in a non-arrogant way. You're not going to say something ridiculous. You are going to show them and tell them why you can be trusted. Okay. In my self-storage pitch, which we're going to talk about in a little bit later, we're trying to call storage. The first thing I say on the phone right away, as soon as I talk to somebody, is, hey, my name is Nick. I'm with a company called Bolt Storage. We own and operate 62 facilities, over 1.9 million square feet, and we've acquired 10 properties in the last 3 years in your state. Okay, what does that do? That's me laying out the facts that, hey, maybe I should listen to this person. They're an expert. They're kind of a big deal. Okay. Then the next step is to talk about the negatives. Too many salespeople, they're always just constantly selling what is amazing. They're talking about what works and they don't do a good enough job. And Jeremiah, feel free to butt in and elaborate on any of these, or we can just let you kind of point out what I mixed up. But they don't do a good enough job actually telling folks why it might not work, or managing expectations with a timeline, or talking about all the things that could go wrong. And when you start to do those things, I have a contractor buddy. I have two friends, one contractor friend who runs around over-promising work, saying that they're going to be able to do it at a low price, and constantly saying that they can do it on a really quick timeline. And I have another contractor who goes and sells work by being very realistic with clients. He's like, hey, look, you know how this goes. I'm going to do everything in my power to save you money. I've got a lot of experience. I have an amazing subcontractor base, and I'm very, very good at what I do. But this is construction. Things happen. I'm going to rip out your shower and I might find something that could cost us more money. These are the things that could go wrong. These are the things that I've seen go wrong on things like this. Our timeline, I think if things go really well, we can remodel this bathroom in 6 weeks, but it might take a little bit longer to get people on site. We might have some problems with scheduling. We might not be able to get the tile. We might not be able to get the vanity in time. And it could be a 12-week process. Like, how would you feel about that? And what he does is he really builds trust that way. He shows that he's an expert, and he also talks about the negatives so that people are like, wow, this guy's worried about this stuff so that I don't have to. Then, as Jeremiah likes to say, I'm qualifying the person, okay? Too many salespeople, they're spending, and go ahead, I'm gonna let you touch on this one, Jeremiah.
I think qualifying the person is so critical. And back to, I guess, like talking about the negatives, I think more often than not, I listen to sales calls and salespeople are always trying to talk about how great it will be once we use your solution. And the challenge here is that it doesn't always go to plan. And that's true in general contracting. That's true in selling software. It's definitely true in selling local home services. It's true in every business. And an easy way to get ahead of that is tell people, here's all the reasons why this won't work out. And here's the reasons why it went wrong for other people. That also helps build the filter on who's going to be a good customer or not. And that lends itself to how do we actually qualify the person. Allow that person to start validating, am I even a good fit, right?
Yep.
Change seats. They can start to ask questions. If this is a good thing for me, for my business, will this fit for me? Whenever that starts to happen, two kind of like really interesting things kind of click for them. One, they're starting to kind of like sell themselves, right? They start to ask these questions and they say, well, I do need this and I do need it by this date and it will help me, accomplish these things. And they start to really sell themselves on how or why that solution actually works. The other thing really interesting that happens whenever they qualify this is that they start to understand maybe what the capabilities of the solution are and what they're not. I think oftentimes people are looking for, these silver bullets or, one thing to cure all the problems. If we start telling people what the negatives or what we don't actually do for them, this will allow them to self-qualify them out and say, actually, it's not the right price. It's not the right fit for me. And you don't want to do business with those customers anyways. At the end of the day, those are the people that you're going to want to probably fire in a couple months because they weren't a good fit initially and you didn't spend enough time qualifying them out of your process rather than focusing on the qualification in.
I have a saying to almost everybody on my team that stress in business is simply unmet expectations. I'm going to say that again. Stress in business is simply unmet expectations. Somebody else is expecting something of you because of generally a previous promise that you have made, and you're not delivering on what you told them you could do. We see all over the internet where people say, if only all these small businesses would just do what they said they were going to do, they would earn a lot more business and they'd be, maybe even good at what they do. And I don't think the problem is that obviously these people are trying to do what they said they're going to do. Many times they're not actually managing expectations the right way and talking to people about how it's realistically like, and they ended up attracting the wrong clients. They're not letting the people who expect things that are unreasonable disqualify themselves. And then what happens is these people start to sell themselves. I have a really good example of this. So in the self-storage business, I've sat right here at this very desk in my office. I'm in my home now, and I've sold folks on investing with me in self-storage. I've sold them on investment. Most of these calls these investors take, all the person, the sponsor, the person who's selling the deal, all they talk about is the positives. They're saying, self-storage is the most amazing asset class. We're diversified among all these tenants. There's only 4 square feet per person in this market. The last 8 years, self-storage has outperformed all these other areas. They're just constantly talking about all the amazing things about self-storage. I talk about the negatives. I say, hey, real estate's pretty darn cyclical. Interest rates could go up and we could, not make as much money as we thought we were going to make. Home transactions could slow down and we could not be as full as we thought we were going to be. I can promise you that I'm going to try my best and I'm going to keep these properties clean and I'm going to focus on renting units, but things go wrong. There's a lot of things that are out of my control. These are the things that are out of my control. And I'll start to talk about the negatives. I'm kind of qualifying the person as well while I'm doing this. And then I flip the script right then and I lay the hammer down, which Jeremiah has really taught me to do this well. I just said a lot of, and I'll just role play that I'm talking to you, Jeremiah. I just said a lot of, frankly, bad things about real estate and investing. Like sometimes I get in these calls and I actually scare people out of doing these deals. What are you like? Why do you want to be a self-storage investor? And what makes you think that I'm going to do a good job managing this money? And then I shut up and I stopped talking. So I showed that I was an expert. I talked about the negatives. I qualified them. And then I flipped the script with one question. Why are you interested in investing in self-storage, given what I just told you? And I'd be quiet. And it's literally been, I've had this happen so many times that the next 10 minutes of the call, they go on and on and on, talking themselves into doing the deal with me. It's magic.
I think it's such a critical thing. And I think the thing that helps you win there is like, that silence is really important. Whenever you start to ask questions and start to almost disqualify your own question, why would you want to invest in self-storage? It could be a great opportunity for you. This is where most people decide to go out and pitch. Here's all the reasons why. Here's what you should do. Here's the investment opportunity. We're going to deliver this amount of IRR. Here's all the other happy people that have done this. But instead, sitting back and letting people really talk and think through why is this good for them can work in any kind of situation, whether it's an investor, right, or someone buying a product or a service.
Now, Jeremiah, you were doing for this last point, I want you to tell the story that you were doing. We don't want to say the name of the company, but you were working with one of our reps and you were watching game tape, as we like to call it. And you were listening to his calls while he was talking to clients, and these clients were eager to buy, but something just didn't quite happen on these calls.
Yeah, there was so we had really interesting engagement, right? And the people were saying, this is a good fit for me. I
need this. I want this.
I need this. I want this. I'm interested in moving forward. And the typical response was like, okay, great. I'll send you a proposal or I'll follow up with you. And we'll try to schedule maybe some next steps, or letting the person really kind of dictate the momentum and what's actually going to happen here. But instead, we need to start asking for the business. Great. Based on our conversation today, we know that this is going to solve X, Y, and Z. Sorry, I'm not trying to reveal the company or
no.
That it does.
I'm smiling because it seems so obvious, but it's not natural. It's not naturally comfortable for a salesperson to do. It's actually very hard to do, but it seems so obvious.
We summarize all the reasons why they just self-qualify, that they said, this is a good fit for me. Here's the things that it's going to help me accomplish. Are you ready to move forward today?
If I send you a link right now, are you ready to pay for this and become one of our customers?
And then you just sit there. And then you have to let them answer and say yes. And in this case, right, like what started to happen was this kind of like, increase in the amount of volume of close one deals simply by starting to ask for the business. And I think that oftentimes it's literally just one small tweak to the sales process. And this is why, sales is life. And as we look at these different engagements that we have, by simply changing the types of questions that we're asking, or adding a question at the end of a call, what we start to see is that close won deals in this case increased over 150% from the prior months. And so at this chart, you're looking at close lost, losing a bunch of deals, literally not converting one deal in this case, not asking for the business. We made a shift. That shift started really slow, 4 deals. Next month went up to 9 deals. Subsequently, then we had 14. And then last month was the best month that the company did ever. And that simply started by 1, adding a little confidence, and 2, asking for the business.
Yeah, I want you to elaborate a little bit more on the confidence, because that was the other half of the problem here with this particular thing. But we have a really good question. It seems like this would be great for inbound leads. And this person's right. Like flipping the script, trying to talk somebody out of something, that's really good when you're having an inbound lead of somebody who you've already pre-qualified. They already know they want to invest with you. They already like you. And it's, a very warmed lead, which a lot of people are used to dealing with, maybe from referrals or an inbound person on a website. How would you script this for outbound leads, cold calling? And my strategy is a little bit different there, in that I have what's called the 8-second rule. The 8-second rule is that in the first 8 seconds, I'm trying to prove that I am worth talking to in some way. Because so many of these cold calls, cold emails, and this could be the first 8 words of a cold email that you're sending, right? You are literally spending this 8 seconds trying to prove that you're worth talking to. That's me cold calling self-storage owners, okay? I'm calling somebody who owns a self-storage facility. They don't want to talk to me. They know I want something from them. And I'm trying to convince them to sell their property to me. I'm trying to give them money. And sometimes when you're buying, you're selling. Actually, every single time you're buying, you're actually selling. So I'm calling this owner and I'm talking to them. The first 8 seconds, I know that I have to prove that I'm an expert before they'll trust me, and they'll start to open up and they'll start to have a conversation. And I can do these things later, which is flip the script, qualify them, and so on. So that first 8 seconds, hey, my name is Nick Huber. I'm with Bolt Storage, and I own 63 self-storage facilities and 1.9 million square feet. And I actually already said this, 10 properties in your state that we've acquired in the last year. We're buying aggressively. I would love to have a conversation with you just to let you know the value of your property. You can, see if you're potentially interested in selling. Okay, boom. What I did right then is I dropped a hammer that I'm different, I'm worth talking to. Now, early on, you really got to get creative, because sometimes you're not worth talking to. Sometimes you don't have a lot of self-storage facilities. Sometimes you don't have things to brag on, but you can always get creative and think of some way to differentiate yourself and beat down those hurdles. Then you start moving through the rest of the Huber method, which is qualifying them, building trust, talking about the negatives, and then dropping that hammer, which might be, hey, I know interest rates are high. Maybe values aren't where they were in 2021, but what makes you think that right now is a good time to sell your self-storage facility? And then I'm shutting up and they're doing their thing.
I think you touched on something really interesting to make this actionable. In those first 8 seconds, Nick did something really important. He told them who they are, who he is, right? Why is he calling? Like, why am I even lifting up the phone and calling you? And then he's telling the person on the other side of the line, like, what's in it for you? Like, why should you listen to the rest of this? Because at the end of the day, if we don't capture their attention in those first 8 seconds, what's going to happen is someone's just going to go, click, this is a sales call. This feels desperate. Yep. I don't understand how or why I should even talk to this guy, Nick, on the other side of the phone. I think the other thing, Nick, that you touched on that's really interesting is that sometimes we don't have 63 self-storage facilities. We haven't bought 10 properties, in your state in the last couple of years. And I think one of the things that I constantly have, and this goes back to that confidence issue, is that you need to be confident about your ability to be an expert on your product. And the thing
this is so important, because literally we're starting a business from scratch. You were doing a coaching call with a business that was brand new here. So they couldn't say they have 60 clients. They couldn't say they manage all this ad spend, performance marketing in this case. So where you're going with this is absolutely perfect. And I think if you're watching, listen up, because if you're in the early stages of sales, confidence is one of the most important things.
So you need to have confidence that you are an expert in your product and what you're selling. And even though you haven't sold hundreds of clients before, there's a reason why you have that seat today. And that seat's important. And that seat should be a position of expertise, but also knowing that you're going to actually make a meaningful impact on that person's business. And
I remember you called me, Jeremiah, and you're like, the sales confidence here is at an all-time low. It's almost pitiful. Like they're just not sure. And you're like, I'm going to build this guy up. I'm going to make him think that he is a really good salesperson. I'm going to make him, start to realize that he's an expert. And when you started doing that, it compounded, and this one loss just exploded.
Yeah. So if you have a self-limiting belief that my product is not good enough or I'm not good enough to talk to that person, the other person will feel it. And you have to tell yourself, and you got to hype yourself up that I am a great sales professional. I do have something of value, and I'm an expert inside of my product. And it's also okay to say, I may not know self-storage in Indiana, like you do, like you've been operating here. But what I do know is that we can do X, Y, and Z. And you can start to talk about selling those digital marketing services or selling your home cleaning business or whatever that thing may be as an expert or as a position of expertise, and tell them why your offering is better than someone else, the reason why you started that business, and the reason why you're in that seat today. But it always starts from that mindset change of those self-limiting beliefs that this product isn't valuable, I'm not valuable, this person is not going to have a conversation with me. And the second you do that, someone can smell it and feel it.
And I think it goes back to step one of the Huber method, which is, operate from a point of leverage. You could need a deal. You could have to have a deal to save your company, but you have to walk in that thing understanding that if I can walk out of here. If I have to, I can walk out here. I can fire this customer. I don't have to have this. I do not have to have this. And then you're just kind of building on that point that you're operating from a point of leverage, and they can sense it. It's really, sales is kind of an emotional thing where they can sense confidence. They can, they can sense this trust that you gain by, talking about the negatives, and they can really sense if you don't actually need them as a client. And if you start operating like you have to have them, like you're willing to talk about concessions and discounts already, and I want to hear Jeremiah's spiel on discounts, but if you start offering up those things and talking about it in a way at the beginning, they'll walk all over you, and 9 times out of 10, it won't be an actual profitable or healthy client relationship that you have.
Yeah, the first time, if you enter into your first conversation with someone and start talking about discounting your services, they're going to think that it's not valuable. And I hear too many people enter into a conversation feeling like they need to tell them about other people's pricing, about how much they can discount it, or what they can take off the top. Now, a lot of people ask for discounts just to see if they can. And this is probably the first test that you have with someone in business. They're already asking, can you give me this to me for a little bit less? And if you're operating from a point of leverage, the answer is no. First, you got a little bit more about their business before you even offer them a discount. I saw a really good question in here in the chat from Lawrence here. In my service business, projects tend to be, for the most part, custom cost based on the size of the project and other requirements. I find myself in sales calls doing the very thing you mentioned, saying I'll put together a proposal and get it over to you tomorrow, which sounds like the kiss of death. And it has been before. How can someone with a custom project quoting who needs time to calculate be able to push someone into a sale right on the call?
Man, there is nothing worse, Jeremiah, than folks who promise that they're going to turn something around. And I know as soon as they make the promise, I'm like, dude, that's not realistic. You're going to be later. You're not going to get me this tonight. You're not going to get me this tomorrow. Just tell me that you're slammed with work. Maybe you're working with a lot of customers. That's an amazing way to say that you're operating from a point of leverage and you don't necessarily need this work. Hey, man, I'm slammed. Business is booming. People are loving what I'm selling right now. Things are going well for me. I think you'd be a great client. I really want to work with you. But guess what? It's going to be next Wednesday by the time I get you this proposal. That almost makes me, they're playing hard to get. It almost makes me want it more.
Yeah, I think you, one, set realistic expectations, and two, I think you need to be able to at least tell people what your service costs whenever you're in front of them the first time. And you got to be able to do that back of the napkin math. Typically, when I work with a customer your size, it's between $5,000 and $8,000. That way they know.
That's a way to qualify too. That's a beautiful way to qualify.
Beautiful way to qualify. Someone says, hey, I actually, this is way outside of my budget. I'm looking to spend $2,000. Hey, thanks so much for sharing that with me. It seems like we're not a good fit. Let's probably end the call now, save each other some time.
Yeah, I think part of the hardest job that you have when you're on coaching calls inside my portfolio is that folks are wasting time with people who are not actually their real clients. Can you talk a little bit more about that level of qualifying, of literally teasing your prices, which we do on the WebRun website now, that to fill out an actual lead request form on our website, you see in parentheses that a new website costs $10,000 plus. And guess what? The people who don't think that that's ridiculous, they're not going to fill it out. That's a good way we've increased the quality of the people on our calls. But talk a little bit about just the struggle that you've seen with salespeople bending over backwards for customers that aren't even in their wheelhouse.
Most people think that your job is to qualify prospects in, when in reality, it's your job to qualify prospects out as quickly as possible. Sales is a really precious energy and a resource inside of businesses. And if you have other customers that are willing to exchange dollars with you. Your job is to better understand whether or not this person can afford my service, they're a good fit for it. So asking really discreet kind of qualifying questions up front is very critical. Is this within inside of your budget? Share what that budget is. Oftentimes, too many businesses will not tell you what it costs. How long does it take to implement? If they need this tomorrow and it takes your service 6 weeks to deliver that product, not a good fit for them. Also, understanding who is going to be involved and do they have people to actually go and support it. Also, very critical for us to be able to qualify those people.
Sometimes we're actually selling to people who don't even have the power to make the buying decision. Let's see. If you're watching this, we're off to a great start here already. I think this is going to be really valuable. But let us know how we're doing. Go right here in the Q&A and let us know. Give us a little bit of feedback, because sometimes me and Jeremiah feel like it's just us here riffing back and forth. But let us know what you want to elaborate on and what we might be missing.
Couple questions in here. Yes, there will be a recording. And I think we already answered the other one. Elaborate more on how to sell when you have nothing to brag about and very little experience. Let's see.
You got to get creative.
With no clients, or property management business with only one client. The second,
I think telling a story is a really good piece of advice here too. Like, you can tell a story that is about a win that would be advantageous for that client. If I was a property management business and I had one client, I would think of how I rented that first apartment to that one client, how I found them, and I would tell that story. I would say, hey, I actually have a client that's a lot like you, and these are all the methods. I vetted the client this way. This is how I found them, and I rented this apartment in 3 days at $500 more per month than my customer would have been happy with. And wow, they're like, okay, boom, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I think storytelling is super powerful. Every time that I feel like I need to pitch someone, I think about how do we tell a story about someone else. So if you have one, customer example or one experience in the past of, selling, say digital marketing services, it's our responsibility to go out and tell that story in a way that's compelling, that shares, maybe puts that person in the other seat. And storytelling is such a natural thing that everyone can kind of relate to. And instead of that person saying, hey, I'm going to reject your product or service, they're just saying, hey, I'm just kind of rejecting that story. Maybe that's not a great fit for me, but it's a great way to start to create common bonds with people.
Danny asks, is the training available for individuals or only for teams, and how does it work? And look, I don't want to sit here and pitch you on using our company, the Huber Method, to train your sales teams or yourself, to get one-on-one coaching for you if you're a small business owner. You can use any kind of coaching, okay? It can be done by anybody else, and it can also be done by yourself. You can go through, you can record yourself, you can analyze yourself, you can write down ways that you could improve your own coaching. And if you have a team that you manage, if you're a small business owner and you have people that are out selling, or they're selling on Zoom calls, or they're selling on the phone, you need to be the one that is listening to these recordings and doing this exact same thing. So whether you hire us or not, that's fine. You can go to hubermethod.com. You can hire Jeremiah and his team to coach your salespeople, or you can do this yourself. Jeremiah, why don't you talk through just, if you're going to be a sales coach, if you're going to hire a sales coach, how you should do it? Because a football team, a basketball team, they're going to watch hours of game tape, right? They're going to study how things work. They're going to study their competition. They're going to study their moves and how they can improve. But salespeople who are selling for a living, trying to make money, they're professional salespeople, very rarely actually analyze themselves.
Everyone likes to look at the big contracts that athletes get, but there's a lot of work behind that, right? And if you take the amount of shots that Steph Curry's made in practice, if you take the number of balls that Tom Brady has caught and thrown, inside of practice, the best athletes in the world always watch game tape of themselves. And in the absence of having a good sales coach, you should be watching as much game tape of yourself as possible. This helps you review and understand what's actually happening on your calls. You may pick up on things because you're having a live conversation. You may have missed the way that someone shifted inside of their seats, a specific word that they said, maybe when the tone of the conversation really shifted. And this helps illuminate those things. And so imagine trying maybe like a new play, for the first time during like the AFC Championship. It could go very wrong, right? You don't want to practice that the very first time on a live prospect that may pay you $8, $10, $20, $30,000. But in the game of sales, people are doing this all the time. They're like, I'm just going to try something new on a new prospect, and it may fail. But instead, we need to practice this thing, together. So coaching helps build that confidence of you and your team by practicing the skills in a lower stakes environment. And this is exactly how we do it at Huber Method. So first, what we do is we look for customer recordings. And what we're really looking out for is how you and the team are talking to customers. What's actually happening whenever you interface with them? Do you jump on immediately and just start pitching your product? Is it a really slow burn at the beginning here? Do you have a script? Is it repeatable? We asked everyone to submit 2 to 3 calls on a weekly basis. After that, then we start to break down what's actually happening on those calls. Do we have a strong opener? Are we asking meaningful discovery questions? Are we asking for the business? Do we sound nervous? And so on a weekly basis, as we look at those calls, we focus on key metrics inside the pipeline. Are we actually converting these deals? Nick mentioned this before. Pipeline solves a lot of problems for businesses, but if we're unable to convert that demand, the business doesn't convert all of that demand into revenue. And that's our job, right? As sales professionals, is to take all of that demand and convert it into revenue in the most efficient way as possible. And ideally, we're doing this at 30, 40, 50% for inbound leads. It's going to be lower for outbound sales, usually somewhere in the 15 to 25% for the best teams in the world, much higher on the inbound side. Once we understand the key metrics, then we're going to review the pipeline. How many of these opportunities do we have to go and close? If I talked to someone last week, have I sent them a meaningful follow-up? And we're going to track that through the pipeline and make sure we're doing the necessary steps to be successful and also close that deal. Then we're going to listen to those calls. Whenever we're listening to these calls, we're not actually just listening to a 30-minute conversation all the way through. We're picking core moments of that conversation and really focusing on one skill. And where I think people get it wrong is like, I want to improve sales. I want to improve my sales ability. And they try to work on everything. And that's like going to the gym. And instead, every day you're trying to just get fitter. And instead, you need to work on a couple of things, whether it's cardio, lifting, a specific, kind of like muscle group. And in this case here, we're working on specific things that are actionable, 1 to 2 things that we can get better at. Once we do that, just like Nick did with me today here, we role play it out. What would we do differently? What did you pick up on here? What did that person say? How can we address that slightly differently on another call? And then we set our action items and keep ripping. And then as part of this, we start to improve things like, how do we look at the type of copy that we're using? Are we too focused on ourselves and not our customers? Do we have a good discovery guide in place? Are we sending email follow-ups? What does the text message look like? What's that DM supposed to sound like? And then we rinse and repeat until we actually start mastering these skills.
And I think a sad reality is that salespeople are rightly the highest paid people at a company. Like if you're a business owner and you've hired a salesperson, or you as a business owner are actually doing the sales, which I think Jeremiah and I would both recommend if you're in the early phases, you as the business owner need to be the one taking control and ownership over the sales process and doing the sales. But it's that these folks are not always saying the right things. And it's so sad. Like it's such an easy tweak sometimes to increase a closing percentage from 33% to 45%. Like you can literally change a couple things about your salesperson's pitch and their method, and you can increase sales drastically. Tell the SEO story, Jeremiah. We can actually just say that this is from Bold SEO, but you were working on coaching with our team, and they kept saying, man, I had this amazing sales call. I sent the payment link. I asked for the business. I did everything, and they didn't close. And you came up with one idea that changed our entire closing percentage and made our business exponentially more valuable during this coaching.
Everyone has probably experienced a little buyer's remorse at some point in their life. And they bought something, they have that little pit in the stomach. They don't know if it's actually going to deliver the value. And this is a big challenge for service-based businesses. People are, asked to exchange thousands of dollars upfront for a service they're unsure about that they're going to deliver results. And instead, what we did at Bold SEO was we started to realize that we had verbal commitments, we had proposals out to people. All these
we qualified them. The customers were qualified.
They were great fits, right? They had a local business that required this. There was, Google My Business needed to be improved. There was a meaningful way that we can improve the volume of leads that they had. We had quantifiable goals with these customers, and they said, I want this. We sent them a proposal, and they never got back to us. So we looked at every opportunity that never got back to us within 2 weeks. They went.
To be fair, we were asking them for, $2,000, 2,700, 3,800. So we were asking them for big chunks of money, but we knew they were fit. We knew it was going to work. They just didn't pull the trigger.
And if you think like the psychology behind this as a small business owner, they're relating this back to if you own, say, a lawn care company, that's a lease on a pretty big piece of equipment or a couple vehicles, right? Or you're exchanging thousands of dollars for these services. So what we started to do was started to actually provide the value upfront. And we started to look at, here are the first 3 links that we would go out and secure for you. So we followed up with everyone and said, hey, instead of you just trusting us for us to find good links, we're going to give you all of the links that you need up front. 1, 2, 3. Sent them over to there, and we started to convert them almost immediately.
Literally, our sales guy sent 6 emails. He did an hour's worth of work. He sent 6 emails. He sourced, 18 links that we would buy and said, hey, these are the 3 links. I'm ready. Like, as soon as you hit this payment button, I'm ordering these 3 links for you. Like, I found them, I've located them, I've sourced them. We're ready. Sent these 6 emails out, and over the next 4 hours, we were having a total party in the company Slack because 4 of the 6 had booked and paid at the link. And we're like, holy shit, that was amazing.
Pretty incredible results pretty quickly by making one small change. The Bold team now sends these 3 links out to most folks that request a proposal. So really fantastic way to start demonstrating value. So in some cases, it's about doing the work before the work. Oftentimes people ask, hey, Jeremiah, what's a coaching call look like with me? And I say, hey, you were just on it. I sat down with a business owner the other day. He said, hey, I've got 3 businesses. He's selling in the security space, really wanted to improve his sales process. It's just him. He said, hey, I've already tapped in my own local network. I've already tapped out all of the people that I need to. I'm thinking about, how do I go out to all these different prospects? How would you set up my sales system? And we sat down for 30 minutes, initial discovery call together, walked through a couple areas and ways to actually go out and go to market and bring the product to market, and told them, hey, this is how I'd allocate my time and my resources as I'm scaling up this sales organization, and you're about to make 3 to 5 sales hires. He said, I can't make sales hires until I make a couple sales. So we repositioned his sales process to focus on getting immediate deals done and going through there. We just demonstrated the value of what our coaching looks like. His answer was, hey, I'm not a good fit for you today, but in a couple weeks from now or a couple months from now, this is probably the right fit for me. And that's the way that we start to demonstrate value inside of service businesses.
We have a question. Greg asks, what do you charge, Jeremiah, to coach an individual and a team? And can we give folks a range so they just let them know if they do hire a firm, what they could expect to potentially pay, or if they decide they want to do this themselves and save the money?
Yeah, great question. We charge $1,500 a rep to coach. We also offer executive coaching at $2,500 per person per month.
And teams, there's group discounts. If we do 5 reps, it might be $5,000 a month or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's scaled group discounts. So that $1,500 starts to scale down to closer to $1,000 as you start to add people into the groups. We do group and one-on-one coaching. So the group-based coaching could be 3 to 5 sales reps inside of your company, plus the business owner working with you guys on strategy. And we do that on a weekly or bi-weekly basis.
All right, let's go. So you had sent me, Jeremiah, basically some very common question. I've actually seen some of these in the webinar here. Do you want to talk about do you want to get nitty gritty on the structuring of the call, or would you rather talk about some discovery? And then some business owners are saying, like, just why? Like, why do I need to coach regularly? And we've covered some of this stuff already. Which one of those do you want to kind of dive in on?
Yeah, let's start with like structuring a call and kind of taking ownership of a conversation. I think that one of the things that I've noticed across a lot of businesses as we started to coach is that without any kind of formal training, calls can kind of take their own life and direction. And if you've ever felt like you started a call and you maybe talk a little about background, where you're from, maybe something interesting that you see, kind of in their Zoom window. If you're talking on the phone, maybe connecting with them, kind of about maybe a sport or something like that. But oftentimes you're burning the first 10 to 15 minutes of a conversation, either waiting for someone else to join the call.
Yeah, that is such a good point. Like, how do we keep people who are chatty from like burning up our whole half an hour window? Or some people are asking us a bunch of questions that have nothing to do with what we're offering. These are massive problems for salespeople. What are some tactical tips to like really control that pace and like make sure we're getting to what we need to get to?
Our job is to set the tone and set the pace here. So, I like to think of like every sales call is like kind of like a book. There's a clear beginning, middle, and end. And so in the beginning, we need a repeatable way and a repeatable opener and a clear agenda. Where I think most people fail is not creating a really simple agenda and an end goal. On our call today, we're going to help better understand whether or not sales coaching is a good fit for your team at Bolt Storage. Then we start jumping into an agenda. For the first 5 minutes or so, I want to learn a little bit more about your business. Then I want to share with you about how our coaching methodology works. And if it makes sense, I can share with you some of the pricing and get you a proposal by the end of this conversation. Does that sound like a good use of our time today?
Yep.
And then start asking really crisp questions. Nick, what do you want to cover on today's conversation?
I think a second part of that is to tell them that there's a hard stop. So if you have a 30-minute window, or even if you don't, you can say, hey, look, I just want to tell you, like, I have, it's 1:31 right now. We just got on a call. I have to get on the next one at 2. So I have 30 minutes with you. And literally 5 minutes in, if they're taking the conversation somewhere totally random, which people are crazy, they will talk about everything. I'll literally interrupt them. I'll say, hey, I just want to remind you, like, we have 20 minutes left and we have a lot to cover. I want to know if we can talk about XYZ. Would that be okay? And you're getting them back on track. You're taking control of that sales call so that you can, A, get what you need to get done, and B, you're not wasting your time, because as a sales professional, you're making, $50, $100, $200 an hour at times when you're on these sales calls. You got to make it count. Like, time is money for you.
The other thing too is we want to start then jumping into questions. We should make this feel conversational. We should make it feel easy. We should spend more time understanding the prospect's business, right? And less about us pitching our product. Too often we jump right into, here's what my product, here's what my service can do. We really want to spend that time understanding the business. And then the last part is really where I tell people to get selfish. And to Nick's point here, the last 5 minutes, I always reserve for next steps. What I see too often is that people run a call up right up to the half-hour mark or the hour mark here.
Yeah, 30 seconds left. They're sprinting.
Yeah, I've got a minute left. What do you guys think? Can we talk about next steps? Maybe I could chat with you next week. Do you want me to send you a proposal here? And everyone's like, bye. They're all jumping off of the call. They say end call. Instead, what we can do is reserve the last 5 minutes. Hey, in the interest of time, I see that we've got about 5 minutes left. On today's call, we talked about 3 really important things about how to accomplish this. Does it make sense for me to actually get that proposal over to you later this afternoon? And if so, are you guys ready to make a decision? Now, if you have a service that you can sell directly on the call, hey, we've got about 10 minutes left. We just did this with one of the other businesses. I listened to a call here. He said, hey, I'm ready to move forward. And he said, okay, great. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left on the call. Do you have the proposal in your inbox? And he said, yeah, I got it in my inbox. He said, what do I need to do now? He said, first you need to sign it, and then you need to hit the payment link. 10 minutes of this conversation, walking through the proposal. Great. He goes, I signed it. And then he said, okay, great. I have a couple of questions. If this goes wrong, who's going to make sure that they fix it, or, they can validate that the math is right here. And he said, hey, I'm going to give you some confidence about how or why the sale is going to happen. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to validate it with our CPA. And then here's the payment link. And he said, hey, great. I got the payment link. And he said, just put your credit card in now. And then
our team has literally started one call closes for $3,000 plus decisions. And it's a beautiful.
This one was
it was a website.
No, it was a cost segregation site.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So this is a great question. I think we actually might end in this. How do business owners who do their own sales know when it's a good time to hire and bring on a salesperson or a team? I think that owners of businesses need to own the sales until they're making $20,000+ a month of profit. Like, that's a line in the sand that I'm going to draw arbitrarily. Obviously, there's nuance. Obviously, there's things that change. But if you, as a business owner, are afraid of sales, you're not taking ownership of it, you're not getting coaching, you're not getting those reps, you're not practicing it, you're not getting better at it, your business is not going to thrive. You, as the business owner, the highest value thing that you can do, well, there's 2 of them, is to sell. You're outselling, you're talking to clients. And actually, we have data that clients sold, like owners sold business that they closed at a higher percentage than even the best sales reps. So you spend half your time selling and you spend half your time training and building your team. If your team is growing so fast that you can no longer hire fast enough, like, okay, forget running the lawnmower, forget building the website, forget actually delivering the product. If you're still doing that, then absolutely should not hire an outside salesperson. You need to be the one selling. As soon as your time and you cannot hire and manage your team fast enough, as soon as that overcomes half of your time, then it's time to bring on an outside salesperson. Jeremiah, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the highest value activity that most business owners can do is find talent and sell new customers. And I would argue that the best business owners never stop selling. They're always responsible for bringing in leads. They're always responsible for talking with customers. To get really specific about the question, whenever 90% of your time is selling and you can't run any other part of the business, then you should really start to evaluate. This is the time to start bringing in someone to sell. And maybe just to kind of bolt on to some of the other questions in here, there is a lot of fantastic 1099 talent that will go out and close deals for you. You can bring on a contract seller to actually help and validate that your sales process is working. The other thing too is that I always recommend hiring two people. Bring them in on contract, put them up to one another, and see who sells better. One is always going to be a little bit better than the other. Put them next to each other, pay them on high commission, no base salary, and let them run.
And then turn the one loose who doesn't do well. So I'm going to leave with a really tactical thing here. Chris says, "Hey, how do you think about this pitch?" He wrote an example. "Hey, Jeremiah, my name's Chris, and in the last 3 months, I've helped 20 homeowners completely negate their electric bill by switching to solar. Is that something that you'd be interested in?" I hate that pitch, actually. That's way too vague. It sounds almost too good to be true. It doesn't sound personal at all. I would say, "Hey, Jeremiah, last week I helped somebody around the corner from your house, somebody in your neighborhood, save over $300. Be more specific. I helped them save over $300 a month on their electric bill by switching to solar. Do you want to have a conversation?" That is a way better pitch than "I've helped 20 homeowners save money on their electric bill."
Yeah, be specific and use real examples. I think that goes back to storytelling, making sure that you have a concrete example in stories, and people buy from other people, and whenever it's too broad of a solution, or to Nick's point, it almost feels too good to be true. People's kind of like red flags immediately go off.
Oh, that little pitch there just makes my bullshit meters go off in my head, and you don't want to flip those bullshit meters. This is excellent. So if you're listening to this, you are realizing you have a long way to go. You realizing you have a sales team that maybe isn't optimized. You haven't focused enough on training them and getting their pitch correct, and you've never watched their videos or recorded their calls. Go to hubermethod.com and click the link and sign up for hubermethod.com. Get on with Jeremiah, get on with one of our coaches, and we will amplify your sales team. Or you can do it yourself, or you can take a lot of the gold nuggets here. Now, there's a couple minutes left. Drop your gold nugget in the Q&A. So I'm going to ask you a favor right now. Go down to the bottom, click the Q&A, and drop what was your number one takeaway. And we're going to highlight a couple of those before we get out of here. Jeremiah, any final words here before we send them off?
Yeah, I think that if you can't afford a coach, start to listen to your own calls. Start call recording, start listening to your own calls today. Identify 1 to 2 things that you can focus on to become better at, and take that as your personal responsibility to get better at your craft. Sales will not improve if you don't spend time honing your craft.
Yep. Take ownership of it. It's uncomfortable. It's hard, and it's a muscle. Like I was not always good at sales. I was unconfident. I didn't know what to say. I made a lot of mistakes and I lost a lot of money. Half of it is literally just putting in the reps. It's a muscle. People think, "Oh, I can read the sales books. I can watch webinars like this and I can improve." And yes, part of that's true, but that's like saying you want a body like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And to get that body, you're going to watch YouTube videos and build your plan and study muscles and learn the biology of how muscle is built. You literally have to go to the gym and pick up the weight. There's no way around it. It's hard. There's a reason why salespeople are the highest paid people in the world. There's a reason. It's because it's hard and not everybody can do it. It's uncomfortable, but you got to man up. You got to do it.
Yeah, 70% of everything that we learn is done by doing, folks. 20% is done by watching our peers, and 10% is done by reading. So focus in on the 70% that matters and start to do it better.
I'll literally walk in. I'm about to walk in a meeting. I'm about to have a Zoom call. I'll walk in the mirror. This sounds so stupid. It sounds kind of like I'm a Tony Robbins rah-rah kind of guy, but I'll look in the mirror and I'll say, "Nick, you don't need this deal. You do not need this deal, but you're good enough to get it, and you can do it. You can get this thing." I'm pumping myself up, and then I walk in and I sit down, and I'm in a better mental state, ready to have a confident conversation. And that really does show through in your voice.